tell, then you see the road. I'm out to my soul into the size. Whenever the smoke clear out of my face and my picture perfect. Do it.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the second part of, What If BEN10 Meets Azumanga Daioh? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of J-Boy44 on fanfiction.net. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Ben followed the trail of ink to an abandoned building only to be grabbed by a tentacle of the mutant squid and pulled inside, where he spotted her parents holding Cell and Onimo laughing as he ran to him. Onimo laughed as he lifts Ben's jacket sleeve. "It's finally mine." When he spotted no watch, he gasped, "What madness is this?" Ben smiled smugly as he said, "Not madness, just playing smarter. You see, unlike the Omnitrix, its bootleg replacement, the Ultimatrix, can come off. You said you want me, not me and the watch, so I took it off." Onimo's left eye was twitching. "You, smart but little BRT. Sandra smiled and clapped, "Very smart, Ben. Where did you put it?" Ben then smiled as he looked to his parents. "I trust family," and gave it to Chiyo. Onimo blinked. "Who the hell is Chiyo?" Ben smiled, "My little sister." Outside the building, Chiyo was hiding behind a tree wearing the Ultimatrix on her left arm. Chiyo looked at it nervously. It had morphed to pink on her wrist and she said, "I don't think I can do this." She was shaking, but she took a deep breath and closed her eyes and had a small flashback. In her flashback, it was night time in the Tennyson house and she was about to get into her bed when lighting struck and made her jump up and scream. In a moment Ben ran into her room and saw Chiyo shaking, and he got down and hugged her. "It's okay, Chiyo, I'm here." Chiyo then hugged him and looked at him. "Big brother, how come you're never scared?" Ben then smiled. "Chiyo, I'm always scared." He then held the Ultimatrix. "People's lives are on the line when I use this, including my own. I'm scared to death half the time, but that's what makes me brave. After all courage comes form. Find the strength to face your fears and do what needs to be done." Chiyo blinked in confusion. "But how do you do it? You fight supervillains all the time and you don't show fear. How can you face it?" Ben smiled and said, "It's something I figured out when I was 10, when I was fighting this demon clown. I have had a fear of clown, but I found the strength to beat him, and save Gwen, because I found something I fear above all else, letting people, especially my family, get hurt. Since that day I've focused on what happens if I don't be the hero, and if I fail, and I use that to power through and do whatever it takes to save the day." Chiyo's flashback end. As she took a deep breath and looked at the Ultimatrix, and said, "If I don't do this, big brother, mom and dad will be hurt, or worst. I already lost one family, I won't lose another." She then turned the dial to way big and slammed it down as she said, "It's hero time." In a moment Chiyo started to change into a Takuster. Chiyo's version of way big was only half the size, and clearly had a feminine figure. Her body was white with had what looked like a pink one-piece swimsuit covering it. She didn't have any shoulder plating. Her arm blades were pink. Her legs formed the knee down, they were pink ending in 2 toes. Her eyes were pink as were her checks. She had a second set of eyes that were also pink in her cheeks. She had a small pink fin, and on the sides of her head were 2 small horns that were shaped funny, giving the illusion of pigtails. The Ultimatrix symbol then appeared on her chest as Chiyo finished the transformation by saying, "Way big." Chiyo giggled as she ripped the roof off the building, making Onimo turn and his eyes widen, as she sat the roof down on the side. The mutant squid's eyes widened as it dropped Ben and tried to fly away, only for Chiyo to crush it between her hands, and after she did it she shivered. "Ew, gross." She then whipped her hands on the grass and said, "I got squid goo on my hands." Ben smiled as he hit the ground and he saw Onimo turning to try and run, but Ben tackled him from behind and said, "You're not getting away that easily, Onimo, and I know you had it in you, Chiyo." Chiyo smiled and said, "Thanks, big brother. And it's fun to be big." She then reached into the building and pulled the door of Carl and Sandra's cell as she smiled and said, "Mom, Dad, you look so tiny and cute, form up where?" In a moment Chiyo hit the dial and returned to normal, to find herself outside the building facing the back door. Inside Onimo had forced Ben off him and he rushed out the back door. I won't lose to a little girl. Once outside Onimo saw a smiling Chiyo slam down on the Ultimatrix dial and turn into a few feet shorter version of Big Chill that had larger than normal pink eyes, was smaller and had slightly sparkier wings. Big Chill smiled widely as she said, "That's what you think." Chiyo then blew and in a moment Onimo found himself shivering and slightly frozen. Chiyo then hit the dial on her chest returning to normal and she smiled and jumped for joy, "This time I'm the hero." Onimo was shivering in place as he watched Chiyo take off the Ultimatrix as he said, "Beaten by a little girl. This disgrace will not go unanswered. I will have revenge when it's time for your next checkup form Dr. Onimo." Chiyo didn't pay him any attention as she handed the Ultimatrix back to Ben, "Here you go big brother." Ben smiled as he put it back on his wrist making it turn green again as he smiled, and rubbed Chiyo's head, "You did good Chiyo." Chiyo smiled as Carl patted her head and said, "Of course she did, she's a Tennyson." Onimo then growled as he was semi-frozen, and stuck in place as he said, "This isn't over yet. You accursed meddling Tennysons. I will have revenge on you all. A curse on you all." Chiyo gasped, "I thought Big Brother was kidding. You do talk like that." A little bit later on the beach everyone was watching as a plumber craft was land and plumbers were taking Onimo away. Onimo was shivering, "I'm human. You can't take me plumbers." Kimura without his ID mask then said, "That's a misunderstanding. We can arrest and imprison anyone who commits intergalactic crime." Sakaki then held up 2 fingers, and attempting to harm 2 officers me and Ben, and trying to steal his watch is 2 intergalactic crimes. Osaka then waved, "Hi Mr. Kimura." Mr. Kimura then waved with one of his tentacles and said, "Hi girls." Yukari and Naomo jumped into each other's arms and jumped in shock. We understand what his wife sees in him now. Chiyo blinked in confusion and said, "I don't get it, what do they mean?" Everyone turned pale as Ben said, "You'll get it when you're older Chiyo, but for now just please let it go." At that point Yukari and Naomo fainted as the plumbers left. Tomo then yelled, "I still want admission into the Space Pole's forces." Later on Yukari and Naomo wake up the floor of the beach house's den rubbing their heads. Yukari then said, "I had this strangest dream about Chiyo's big brother being an alien superhero." Naomo's eyes widened as she made Yukari look outside while she said, "It wasn't a dream." Yukari looked outside and she paled as her eyes widened. Outside Ben was in the form of Snarrow. He had one of his bandages tied to a tree and stretched and he span it around so Chiyo could use it as a jump rope. Yukari's eye twitched as she watched and said, "It's true." Carl and Sandra then walked in and Yukari jumped up and pointed to Ben as the mummy alien, "How can you deal with this?" Carl then crossed his arms, "Because we raised our son right. He was given something that allows him to literally do anything yet he only use it to help others asking for no reward in return. He's a hero inside and out." He smiled proudly. Sandra then said, "But it makes grounding him hard since he has aliens that can make clones, not to mention how easily he can sneak out with his power to walk through walls." Naomo's eyes were twitching as she said, "You must be so proud to be a superhero's parents." Lucy then walked in and said, "Yeah, but I want it on record I believe it's Jessica who keeps him from getting a head bigger than Humongosaur." Jessie giggled and kissed her wife, "Don't mind my wife, she just wants to dislike anyone who dates Jessica, but she can't find anything to complain about in Ben." Chiyo was jumping happily while the other girls look on in shock. Chiyo then sang about her big brother. Yomi's eye was twitching, "I don't know if this is sweet or creepy." Jessica held her arms up and said, "Let's see a guy going out of his way to make his little sister happy, it's sweet just like Ben." Sakaki blushed and looked away as she fixed her hair, "I have to say you are a lucky girl Jessica." Jessica put her hands on her peach and smiled, "I know." In a moment Ben timed out making him return to being human and forcing Chiyo to stop jump roping on the Snarrow bandage. Tomo then screamed, "Okay," addressing the elephant in the room. She then pointed at Chiyo. Your family are space cops and you got an alien for a big brother. Have you been to space? Chiyo blinked and pulled out her phone. Yes, for my birthday we had it on spaceship in orbit. Miss Sakaki was there. Kaorin, Osaka, Tomo, Yomi and Kagura looked to Sakaki and said, you went to space? Sakaki nodded, yeah, I'm job is space cop, but things got weird when their cousin Sunny showed up. Kaorin had hearts in her eyes and mutter about who cool Sakaki was. Tomo was crying, that's not fair, we want to go to space. Chiyo blinked as she said, I really don't see the big deal. Yomi's left eye twitched, maybe not to you, little miss can just call for a space ride anytime, but the rest of us will probably never get to go to space. Ben then held up an hand as he said, then let's fix that. My friend Kevin reasonably got his hands on a spaceship. He named the Rust Bucket 3. Long story behind the name. But the point is, how about I just give him a call? Yukari then ran out, what is this I hear about going to space? Osaka then said, Ben is saying he has a friend who can beam us up. Chiyo then said, Miss Osaka, we don't have a teleporter. Ben looked to the sky to see the sun going down as he said, okay, it's sunset here, so back home in Bellwood it would be close to sunrise. I'll send Kevin a text so we can go for our space ride later tonight. Ben then pulled out his phone and texted Kevin, Kevin buddy, when you wake up I would like to ask for a lift in Rust Bucket 3 for some new in on the loop friends. I know you won't want to, so I'm calling on that favor you owe me for not telling Gwen about that deal with Arjit went bad on you last week. Yukari's eyes and head twitched with everyone else while Osaka threw her arms up, yay space ride. In the Rust Bucket 3, Ben, Jessica, Chiyo, and Sakaki were leaning back looking at all the other girls who had never been to space, looking out the window in wonder. Kevin rolled his eyes, it's all just big round rocks or ball of gas, for crying out loud. Chiyo nodded, yeah they are. Yukari turned around to Chiyo and said, how can the wonder of space travel be missed on you? Kevin was piloting as he said, because it's not a wonder, for those in the know if you will, this is a normal everyday thing, like driving a car. Yukari's eyes twitched, if it's like driving a car then maybe you can let me fly. In a moment everyone who had ever heard about the Yukarimobile froze, and turned snow white. Kevin rolled his eyes, no one flies my ship but me. In a moment Chiyo jumped and hugged Kevin, thank you thank you thank you. Kevin blinked in confusion, lost, did I miss something? Sakaki then said, take a ride in the Yukarimobile and you'll get it. Osaka then said, Sakaki, why would you say such a horrible thing? Yukari crossed her arms and said, and what's wrong with my driving? In a moment everyone froze, but Chiyo slowly pushed her into the back of the ship away from everyone. Kevin just rolled his eyes and went down on the steering wheel, making the ship go down, and this ends your space ride. Kagura then said, so we need to find our seats. Yomi then pointed to the window that showed them back in front of Chiyo's summer home and said, no, we already landed. Tomo then looked sad, this isn't like in the movies or TV. Jessica then opened the door to see her mother's and Ben's parents waiting and she said, no, this is reality. Naomo then walked out yawning, and it's night time now, so I guess time for bed. Chiyo then yawned as she said, been a way big day. Ben laughed at the joke as he said, I'm rubbing off on you little sister. Kevin then said, poor thing. As soon as everyone was off he took off into the air, and was gone. 2 peaceful days later, it was time for the Tennysons and Jackson families to part ways with Chiyo's old friends. Both sides were fully dressed and saying goodbye. They were on the beach as the Rust Bucket 3 landed to pick them up. Osaka got down and hugged Chiyo, by Chiyo-chan. Stay out of trouble. Chiyo hugged back and said, but then I couldn't hang out with Big Brother. Sakaki looked around for a moment, where is Ben anyway? Ben then walked by them as Lodestar using his magnetic powers to lift to luggage by their metal parts as he said, handling the loading up quickly. Karen's eyes twitched, how are you talking? Your head isn't even connected to your body. Sakaki blushed and looked away, just one of the wondrous creatures that call the universe home. Lucy was walking on board as she waved to Yukari and Naomo, if you two ever come on out and find yourself in Bellwood we'll have to double date. Jessie then waved, while my wife is teasing she is right you two really need to be comfortable with you are and come on and get happy. Naomo and Yukari's eyes twitched for a moment as they looked at each other. Tomo then looked to Chiyo and said, talk to your grandpa about me. From what I hear he is pretty high up in the ranks. See if he can pull strings to get me on Chiyo. Yomi's eye twitched, please don't the last thing we need is Tomo with laser guns. Tomo then looked at her, what is that supposed to mean? Yomi and Tomo then started roaring at each other. Kagura shrugged and said, what a weekend. Karen smiled happily, and Sakaki is cooler than ever. Carl and Sandra smiled as they waved goodbye and got on followed by Chiyo who smiled and said, bye guys you should all come and visit Bellwood sometime. Jessica smiled as she got on and waved goodbye saying, and you still haven't met Gwen, Ben's cousin you will like her she is a real live witch. Osaka gasped, magic is real too. Yay! Yukari the muttered, great now I need to look out for aliens and demons. The ships then closed up and took off taking the two families back to a plumber base in America more specifically the one in Mount Rushmore. Once off the ship Carl walked up and hugged his father Max, Dad. Max hugged back then in a moment Chiyo ran up and hugged Max's leg, Grandpa. Max smiled and petted her head, hi kiddo I heard you got your hands on the Ultimatrix and got to be a hero. Chiyo smiled, yeah I got to be big for once. Max then smiled as he said, then you should have a little reward, he then put a pair of high-tech goggles on her and sighed for her to follow. Chiyo smiled she followed and Max put on a pair of the same things and hit a wall button opening a door to a big blue bug in an energy dome laying around. Chiyo was confused, what is this Grandpa? Max smiled, it's the last known male Psycholeopteran and don't take your goggles off this thing hunt by hypnosis. Chiyo looked confused, hypnosis. Ben then walked in wearing the goggles as he handed a pair to Jessica. The marking on their wings STMLT the longing center of the brain, what you want most is what you see when you look at them without protection. Which is why they are endangered people keep smuggling them so they can just stare at them all day long. Jessica looked at it, they need to hurry up and finish going extinct if you ask me, but then again I have a problem with anything that wants to eat my Ben. Chiyo jumped and said, say what? Ben looked down, Chiyo this thing is the Necrophrygian's natural predator. It eats big chills or in other words it's one of my natural predators. Chiyo's jumped in shock making her pigtails shake, you have natural predators. Ben nodded and said, even Humongosaur and Way Big have natural predators. Chiyo's jaw dropped, you mean things that big aren't on top of the food chain. Max nodded as he crossed his arms, I know makes you think does it. Ben looked at the trapped bug, I haven't seen one of this since I was 11, and as it's the last male, this could be very well the last time anyone gets to see one. Well I guess that's better for big chill kids. Chiyo looked confused again, the big chill kids. Jessica looked to Ben, wait Ben you didn't tell Chiyo about the time you laid eggs. Chiyo gasped and said, say what? Max giggled, Big Chill is asexual, a one-gender race who all lay eggs once every 80 years. The time came and Ben turned into Big Chill and threw up eggs, which hatched into 14 baby Big Chills. Chiyo's jaw dropped, Big Brother is a mother. Ben looked away in shame and Jessica giggles, yeah but we love him anyway, even if he does have 14 baby bugs out flying through space eating stardust. Jessica then kissed Ben making him blush. Chiyo then looked to the bug and said, so you want to eat my big brother's babies? Well you're not. Because you're locked up. In jail, she then stuck her tongue out at it and put her hands to her ears to mock it and it lunged at the wall of the energy sphere making Chiyo jump up in ear. Chiyo let out an ep as she hid behind Ben, shaking. Ben giggled as he petted Chiyo's head as he said, that'll do Chiyo, that'll do. Max smiled, we're sending it to a game preserve that has a female, they'll probably lay eggs and make more. Chiyo then looked at it, I understand we have to because they are dying out, but as an aunt I don't want nothing that wants to eat Big Brother's kids flying around. Max smiled, yeah but duty calls. Jessica crossed her arms. And it stinks. Chiyo and Ben then tried to hold in a laugh at what she said. Jessica then covered her mouth as she said, "Oh my. That pun was not intended." Ben then held his stomach and said, "I think I'm in love." Jessica then blushed and looked away. Ben then grabbed her hands and kissed her, making Jessica blush. Chiyo then stuck her tongue out and said, "Yuck." Moss smiled and crossed his arms, "Young love." 1 month later. Ben, Kevin and Gwen were currently in the desert at night battling the Forever Knights. Kevin touched a rock and absorbed stone and morphed his hands into hammers to punch a Forever Knight in the chest. Why are they even here? Ben then turned into Humongosaur, before going ultimate, and as he transformed he said, "Ultimate Humongosaur. I think they are looking for something." His hands then turned into Gatling guns, and he began firing at the ground, knocking the knights away with the shockwaves of the impacts. Gwen held her hands using mana arms to grab and threw the knights, and having her other hand close, making a mana wall around her to protect her form. Laser lance fire, and it doesn't matter what they are after, they can't have whatever it is. Ben nodded as he kept firing and said, "Yeah, they'll just use it to try and kill us." "Wait, they are already trying to kill us, so what difference does it make?" In a moment one of Ultimate Humongosaur's missiles hit the ground, making a bright orange light shine forward as the knights ran. From underground a large robot dug itself out. The alien machine had a round body with 10 robotic tentacles tipped in claws, and 2 robotic legs that had backwards knees. In the center was a bright orange orb, and it looked around at them. Gwen then looked to Ben as looked down at her and said, "Don't you say it." The robot then fired off a massive laser blast that knocked Ultimate Humongosaur away out of sight as he screamed. Kevin then quickly jumped behind Gwen as she made a mana dome around her and it fired on them only for the mana to protect them. Kevin then said, "I have no idea what this thing is." In a moment Jet Ray flew over and said, "Now I'm mad." He then rubbed his chest, "That's going to leave a mark." The thing then moved to fire on him as Jet Ray outflew the blast. "How about hitting it while it's focusing on me?" Gwen nodded and dropped her mana dome and made a mana bridge to its head, and Kevin ran up it as he said, "Good plan." Jet Ray kept avoiding blast as while staying in one area so it won't turn around and see Kevin. Once on top of it, Kevin touched the metal of the robot, absorbing it as he said, "Never felt a metal like this before." In a moment he morphed his hands into blade crowbars and stuck them into a crack he saw and split the head open before turning the crowbars into large hands. In a moment Kevin ripped out some wires, making it fall over, as he jumped off, easy as pie. Once over, the orange orb came out of the robot. Jet Ray landed and turned back to Ben, "Any idea what we're looking at?" In a moment the Ultimatrix's dial turned orange as it said, "Database hacked, DNA information downloading." Ben then held the thing as he said, "What the hell?" He then slammed on the dial to try and restart it, to cut off whatever was going on. In a moment there was an orange flash, and where the orb once was now a sleeping 5-year-old boy with brown hair, in a one-piece orange suit. Kevin blinked and asked, "Where the hell have we seen this before?" Bellwood Plumber, base time 12 am. Inside the lab, Ben, Gwen and Kevin were standing yawning as the two Galvins Blukik and Dryba argue over a scan they ran on the kid that came out of the robot. Blukik point to the energy signature, "Now you look here, his energy signature is the same as Contamelia Tech." Dryba then said, "The only thing of those guys to still be around is their ship." Kevin then held his hands up as he said, "Time out, little dudes. Contamelia, I thought they were a myth." Gwen and Ben looked confused. Ben then said, "Go ahead, keep us in the dark, that'll help." Blukik then said, "The Contamelia were thought to be a legend about fifth-dimensional aliens who travel the multiverse, visiting, watching, and sometimes playing a joke or two, but if they didn't like a universe they would use an advanced bomb to blow the universe itself up." Dryba then knocked his slightly taller fiend/enemy way, "But when one of their ships showed up with no one on it, we learned they are real." The team on the ship vanished as the ship's advanced autopilot couldn't be stopped and it warped away to another dimension with them. Gwen crossed her arms, "So you're saying that giant robot that knocked Ultimate Humongosaur halfway around the world was some kind of extra-dimension alien prank?" The two Galvin then said, "As much as we would like to argue on this, we have to agree for once and say yes, the two then shivered for a moment before pulling out some mouthwash to wash the bad taste out of agreeing with each other out of mouths. Ben rubbed his chest, ouch. But what about the kid that came out of the robot? Dryba then jumped onto the lab sink and spat out his mouthwash and said, now that the taste of agreeing with Blukik is out of my mouth. We have no sure answer but we each have a theory. Blukik then jumped on the sink and spat it out and said, mine is its power source was sentient and it hacked the Yuta matrix to see what was in the universe to pick which life form it would be the most fun to be, make its body, and as the kid has no memories or knows who he is I most have also blanked its memory. Dryba then said, mine is a lot shorter and that the kid is the Contumelia version of the Omnitrix or at least the Unitrix, the robot was made to protect it, once that was gone the thing scanned for the closest DNA database to make its own form so it could protect itself. Gwen then finished, with, which was the Yuta matrix, and when Ben restarted it the download failed so the take its own form thing failed leading to human child. Dryba then clapped, very good Gwen very smart for a noun Galvin. Blukik then crossed his arms, I think mine is better and right, but it doesn't really matter at this point, the kid is still giving off a powerful energy signature, and I'm talking power this planet for 10,000 years powerful. Dryba then rubbed his chin, yeah, but an earth saying is something can either be a gift or a curse depending on how you use it. Everyone then looked to Kevin and he said, why is everyone looking at me? Blukik then said, you know why Mr. I was a preteen chimera. At that point an alarm sound making everyone run to the control room, to see the monitors down. Max was trying to get the systems back out, a virus just cut off your surveillance system. I'll take weeks to get a counter-virus program made to fix this. Ben then looked at the Yuta matrix and said, or an ultimate minute, in a minute Ben slammed down on Grey Matter and turned into the little guy. Grey Matter then turned to small dial on his chest making 4 spikes pop out, Grey Matter head grow as he gained a green hover chair, his limbs shirking so he need the chair to move, on the chair was the activate Yuta matrix symbol. The new ultimate then said, ultimate Grey Matter. A third eye then opened on his head making the keys on the control room type rapidly as a counter-virus was upload returning the system to normal and the ultimate smirked. Kevin then hit the button to restart the Yuta matrix making Ben return too human as he said, too weird even by our standards. At that moment the monitor of the room the boy was in was back but the boy was gone. Max gasped, what the? Gwen held the bridge of her nose, the virus was a staller. Kevin then said, but to infest the plumber system would take an inside job. A mole. Ben held his hands up, we can go on a mole hunt later. Right now a kid is missing. At that point a panting Blukik walked in and said, just track him by his energy signature. He then passed out as Dryba showed up on a Galvin hover scooter, he makes a point for once. It's so large it should be easy to find. Max then hit a key making an energy map appear and one super large one was slowly moving out in the desert, well that works. Kevin then nodded, come on let's move. 1 hour later Kevin was driving off-road in the desert with Gwen in the front seat and Ben in the back seat. Kevin yawned, why can't Forever Knights do anything in the daylight? Gwen then noticed they were heading to a castle. Gwen yawned and said, yeah it's way past bedtime. Ben yawned as well as he looked at the Yuta matrix and came up on Chromastone, didn't even know he was still in here, he then slammed it down and transformed. Meanwhile in the Forever Knight lab. The kid was in a large tube crying as someone flipped a SWCH making him scream as it sucked energy from him, the ultimate weapon is finally done. Outside the castle morphed into a large robot that looked to be covered in the stone walls of the castle as armor, making it look like a giant knight. From what was once a tower window an orange glow came making Kevin, Gwen and Ben jump out as it fired a laser blast destroying Kevin's car. Kevin roared. Not my ride, he then touched a flaming piece of what was once his car and absorbed the green metal and said, now I'm mad. The thing then went to fire again and Ben jumped in the way and absorbed the energy beam before firing it back at the robot. The robotic knight then held out its left hand and made an orange energy shield blocking it. Gwen's hand glowed with mana as she said, the thing is clearly using the kid as a power source. Kevin then morphed his hands into swords and said, then we'll smash the kid out of there. Ben then looked at him, Or me and Gwen could keep it busy while you sneak in and get the kid out to make this thing drop dead without its battery. I mean that way you could beat up whoever fired the beam that wrecked your ride. Ben as Chromastone continued to run around absorbing energy blasts and fire them back. Kevin nodded as he said, I like the angle but how am I going to get in? Gwen then held up her hand and said, a short-range teleportation smell that's how. She then chanted and fired a mana blast that hit Kevin in the gut making him let out a cry of ouch. Kevin then looked around to find himself inside what looked like a room of a castle with forever knights holding laser swords all around him. Girl knows her stuff. He then charged in as the knights charged at him. Kevin kept fighting as he morphed his sword hands into hammers and started to knock the forever knights out as he battled his way to a lab where he spotted the kid in the tube crying in pain, in a lot of tears. Kevin gasped, dirty BSTRDS. He then tried to move forward but couldn't thanks to a force field. He then spotted more forever knights as he made his hands swords again to clash blades with them. He said, kid listen. I can't get any closer. So you need to save yourself. A knight then crossed swords with Kevin and said, the alien machine is not a real child. At that point Kevin head-butted the knight knocking him out. The lab shows the kid is 100% organic, he's a real human and alive. The kid kept screaming in pain as Kevin said, listen kid, this is your powers, you control it, not them. The kid then cried out, I can't. Kevin then knocked out more knights as he morphed his hands into maces, yes you can. You're just trying too hard. When I was a kid I couldn't control my powers, my mistake, I destroyed my mom's house and I ran and let them control me and became a monster. Kevin growled as he kept fighting the endless waves of forever knights, but a man taught me a little secret. The reason you can't control it is because you fight yourself. Just like me, you're trying to restrain it. To control it like it's not part of yourself. That's why it's so hard to control. Kevin then avoided some swords as some knights with laser lance showed up and he morphed one of his hands into a round disc to use as a shield to deflect the laser fire. It's part of you, if you embrace it and let go you can control it. Just let all the panic and fear go and embrace who you are. The kid then cried as he took a deep breath, it's my power not yours. He then closed his eyes as the energy the tube was sucking from him went up rapidly making alarms go off. A forever knight then said, the robot is overloading, get out of here. Around the lab things started exploding as Kevin smiled and said, kid you did it. In a moment the force field around the lab failed and Kevin ran in. Kevin morphed his hands into hammers to break the tube to see the kid passing out as he said, kid nice job being a hero. Outside Ben timed out as the robot sparked all over in orange energy and began to fall apart. Ben and Gwen watched in shock. Kevin and the kid are still in there. Once it fell, completely apart. Gwen and Ben were crying at seemingly losing both Kevin and a little kid. Gwen was in tears as Ben put a hand on her shoulder only for a green metal spike to burst from the rubble. The spike opened and Ben and Gwen smiled as Kevin walked out, in his arms the kid who was sleeping as he said, anyone order a rescue? Gwen and Ben then ran up and hugged them. Gwen then kissed Kevin and said, don't scare me like that again. Kevin smiled as he said, I'll try not to. Now let's get this kid back to base, I think we've all had enough for one night. The kid then snuggled into Kevin in his sleep as they walked off. Ben pulled out his phone to call for a ride. Chiyo is going to be sore about missing this adventure. 1 month later. Ben was in Kevin's garage. Before them was all the pieces of Kevin's car. Ben then turned to look at Kevin, before I get jury-rigging, how is the kid? Kevin then crossed his arms, well the kid was so stuck on me my mom adopted him, his name is Henry now by the way. Ben then turned the dial to jury rig and said, good luck being a big brother, it's not easy man, trust me. He then slammed down the dial and in a moment jury rig began to rebuild Kevin's car. 1 month later. Ben was at Mr. Smooth with Kevin, Gwen and Jessica. As they all drank a smoothie, Jessica then said, last day of summer, hard to believe it. Ben nodded, it seems like it's getting shorter and shorter as the years go by. I mean when we were 10 it lasted for years. Kevin nodded as out of the corner of his eye he spotted Henry and Chiyo arguing. Chiyo growled, now Ben would win. He beat Kevin when they were kids. Henry growled, no, my big brother. He can do a lot more with his powers now. Both kids growled. Ben rolled his eyes. Chiyo, he's 5, be the more mature one and let it go. Gwen rolled her eyes. Ben telling someone else to be mature, that's a new one. Kevin then pinched himself, and it was real. That's the shocking part. Now come on Henry, we have to leave, mom needs to take you shopping for a school uniform. Henry then stuck his tongue out at Chiyo and left with Kevin. Chiyo stuck her tongue out back and made a face. Gwen then looked to Ben, and what does this remind me of? Ben rolled his eyes. Ouch, Gwen. Very ouch. He then finished his smoothie and burped before saying, sorry, the cricket chocolate smoothie is messing with my stomach. Jessica drank her and burped a bit too and said, yet it's so good you can't stop drinking it. Gwen held the bridge of her nose and walked away and said, you two are made for each other. Later on it was night time and in the Tennyson house Chiyo was just getting into bed. As soon as she closed her eyes she fell asleep and had a strange dream. In the dream she was in her old school uniform running through Bellwood's empty streets calling out, Big Brother. She then spotted Ben standing on a building as Ultimate Forearms battling a man with reddish skin, a brown trench coat. The man had horns and was using spear as a weapon. Chiyo then spotted a large cage in the middle of the streets. Inside of it were 5 aliens. One looked like a humanoid shellfish who spread water from his palms to try and break out, help us. The next one looked like a turtle who was blowing a wind vortex, he wants to eat our souls. The next alien looked like a large floating jellyfish and he said, we don't want to die. The next one looked like a suit of armor with a red glow in it, we thought the Tennysons were heroes. The last one looked like a bipedal yellow armored humanoid armadillo who had drills for hands, save us BEN10. In a Ben was before them. He opened the cage and in moments the Yuta matrix turned him into them, but his versions had the Yuta matrix symbol on his chest. Chiyo blinked in confusion and went to grab Ben only for him to vanish and for her to find herself at Mr. Smoothie as she spotted Forever Knights marching, everything being destroyed behind them, death to all aliens, they chanted. Chiyo screamed for Ben and found herself appearing on a beach. On the beach a large squid-like monster appeared and morphed into Vilgax as he appeared in the picture she had seen. Chiyo was shaking and tearing up as she backed away. No, Big Brother said you were dead. Vilgax laughed as he drew a sword that gave him armor. I will never die till I have BEN10's head on a platter. A larger squid monster then flowed down from the sky and eat Vilgax, making its monster face morph into Vilgax's. I am the ultimate terror. I will never rest. BEN10 will die along with his world. Chiyo was crying. She spotted Ben as Ultimate Swampfire throwing fire blasts at the thing. Chiyo, run. Chiyo then cried and ran only to drip and fall and see the sword Vilgax picked up. She got up and touched it and looked back to see the giant Vilgax monster about to eat her brother in human form. Ben was being held by the tentacle so he couldn't reach the dial. Chiyo cried and grabbed the sword and slashed it, saying, leave my big brother alone. Chiyo then closed her eyes, crying only to open them and be back in Japan. At which point Osaka, who was in an all-black dress that hid her feet, and had long sleeves, she adjusts a witch hat on her head as she flew down from the sky on a broomstick. Osaka then hopped off the broom and began petting a black kitten that magically appeared in her hands. Hi Chiyo-chan, I'm a witch. Chiyo blinked in confusion, say what? Osaka then smiled blankly and said, yeah. And this is my black kitten, I name him Crystal because it's cute. Chiyo looked confused, say what? Chiyo then once more found herself in Bellwood, where she spotted all the known ultimates circling around her for a moment before they vanished in a flash of green to reveal Ben. Chiyo smiled and raced to him only to walk through him and find herself in a field. Chiyo landed on her face and as she got up she spotted a man, who picked up the same sword as Vilgax. He was donned in armor and was made young again. Me and my knights will WHP out the alien threat. Chiyo then cried, you can't do that. They are all alien with thoughts and feelings. They live, love and laugh. Sure, some are bad, but the same thing applies to humans. The only monster I see is you. In a moment the night vanished along with everything around Chiyo. Chiyo then Walked around in darkness crying, Mom. Dad. Big brother. Cousin Gwen. Anyone? She was then crying when Ben walked in and got down and hugged her. It's okay Chiyo, I'm here. Chiyo then hugged Ben as Ben smiled and opened a door that appeared out of nowhere and said, now come on, let's go home. Chiyo smiled and held her big brother's hand and walked through the door. Chiyo then noticed they were on a path with every form her big brother had ever turned into around them smiling. Ben smiled and said, don't worry Chiyo, big changes and threats are coming but I'll keep you safe. Chiyo looked down and said, but you always save me. I want to be able to help and be a part of the team. I don't want you to have to keep rushing in the way to keep me safe, big brother. Ben smiled and said, Chiyo, you are part of the team. I was scared of the ultimates, and still am. But I use them because the drive to keep my little sister safe keeps pushing me forward. Plus, you were the hero once when you had the omnitrix. Chiyo smiled a little and noticed a pink glow on her wrist. She was going to roll up her sleeve to see what it was, but Ben stopped her and said, you've already seen enough, don't want to ruin that surprise. But come on Chiyo, time to go home and wake up. Chiyo then saw a door which had the Vriedel brothers standing guard in plumbers' uniforms. Ben turned into forearms and picked her up and walked through the door, making Chiyo wake up in her bed. Chiyo rubbed her eyes. What a weird dream. She then yawned as she looked at the clock. It was 5 minutes before her alarm would go off. She got out of bed and said, well, better get ready for school. 1 month later. Ben, Chiyo, Gwen, Kevin, Jessica and Henry were at Ben's house. Henry was playing with a toy version of his big brother's car. When alert came on that showed a lot of Ben's transformation, some of them turning into other aliens. The end with video of one timing out into Ben and saying, all these alien heroes is one guy, Ben Tennyson. Ben's jaw dropped. Chiyo screamed, making her pigtails shake. What evil would do this? Kevin then said, well, you're totally busted, man. Gwen then said, this isn't how it's supposed to be. Ben then spotted a horde of reporters and Ben got up and looked dialed up. Humongosaur, I shall return. He then walked outside, transformed into Humongosaur and roared, scaring them all away. Jessica cracked her knuckles and said, well, time to track down whoever did this and beat the CRP out of them. Chiyo then grabbed a baseball bat and swung it, saying, let me at them, let me at them. She had a cartoonish made face complete with flaming eyes. Kevin then said, that is the most adorable rage I've ever seen. Henry then stuck his tongue out at the TV and said, Badman. As a report came on bad-mouthing Ben. Jessica then turned off the TV. Gwen, Kevin, call whoever you have to do, track this CRP. I'm going to go buy a metal bat. Meanwhile in Japan. It was night when the alert came on. Sakaki was watching in her room, OSHT. Now Chiyo's in danger. In Kagura's house she heard the alert and said, well, so much for being part of the secret-keeping group. In Yomi's house her eyes twitched as she said, what kind of monster would globally reveal a superhero's secret identity? What kind of monster? Tomo was in her house gasping so much she couldn't speak, she was too shocked at the turn of events. In Osaka's house she had on her blank shocked face and said, oh my god. Ben's on TV. She was clearly not smart enough to understand what this all really meant. In Yukari and Nayamo's house. The two were in bed holding each other under the covers as they watched it. Yukari's eye twitched. Now this happens. Great. As if having to look out for aliens and demons wasn't bad enough, now we have to worry about revenge, want supervillains. Nayamo was panting in panic and said, how can you be so clam? Yukari then pulled her into a kiss and said, because I have you in my arms, that's how. Now dear, calm down. Chiyo will be fine. Name one thing that can beat Ben. Nayamo then calmed down as Yukari turned off the TV. Now let's return to snuggling. I think this is a night where closeness is need. Later on, Kevin, Gwen, Jessica, Ben and Chiyo were at a house. Chiyo was confused. Are you sure this is the place, Kevin? Kevin then said, yeah, the track leads here. Ben then rang the doorbell and a woman answered and looked at Ben's jacket. You must be one of Jimmy's friends, is up in his room, come in. They then came in and Jessica said, "I'm starting to think we are dealing with a fanboy." Chiyo held her baseball bat and said, "Well, let's do this." They then knocked on a room and they saw Jimmy Jones and Ben, Kevin, Gwen, and Jessica's eyes widen while Chiyo came out swinging. "You ruined my big brother's life." Gwen used a mana rope to hold her back as she said, "Okay, Kevin's right, this is adorable rage." Jimmy was shocked as he said, "I didn't ruin his life, I gave him the fame he deserved." Ben crossed his arms, "Heroes don't want fame, kid. Let me put it like this, how is it better now that everyone I never put behind bars knows my name? Who is it better they all know my real face? How is it better now that I have to live in fear of the bad guys attacking my family?" Jimmy looked down stunned, "I didn't think." Kevin then removed the copy of Ben's jacket from Jimmy as he said, "No, you didn't, as you've ruined his life. It's going to be harder to save the day when people are swarming you like bugs getting in the way, kid. Also, I don't think you deserve this." Chiyo was growling, trying to get close enough to hit him with the bat. "Come on, let me at him. Let me at him." Jessica then looked at a sad Jimmy, then to his computer, who showed a live video of an alien stealing something in a military base. "I'm sorry, but is that live feed forms a top secret base I see? That is a federal crime. You're 10, you should be outside playing, enjoying your youth, not ruining lives and getting a criminal record that could lock you up for the rest of your life." Ben then put a hand on Chiyo's head, making her freeze as he turned, "Come on guys, let's go. We clearly are need elsewhere." Chiyo blinked in confusion, "But he's..." Ben then finished with, "A kid who clearly never learned to think before he acts. But still just a normal kid. We can't hurt a kid, Chiyo, no matter how great an enemy he is." Jimmy was crying, "But I'm your biggest fan." Kevin then looked back and said, "Then why did you harm Ben in a way no other person ever has, forever putting his family at risk?" They all then left a crying Jimmy, and the house. Ben then threw the keys to his car to Jessica. "Jessica, it's getting late, get Chiyo home, we're going to the military." At that point Kevin's plumber badge rung about the thief and he answered it and said, "We know, we're on our way." Jessica nodded and gave him a kiss and said, "Okay, you come back to me now." Chiyo then walked with Jessica as she said, "Jimmy got off too easy." Gwen then said, "He's just a kid, Chiyo, he didn't understand what he was doing. We can't bust him for that." Chiyo then yelled out, "More like Big Brother is too nice of a guy." Ben then adjusted his jacket as he said, "Yeah, I know, but I'm the hero." Later on in the Rust Bucket 3, Kevin was showing them the project. "Looks like the aliens been stealing parts for a prototype Earth spaceship. Finally, this place is under tech level average. I'm ashamed to tell half of the people I know I'm from this place." Gwen then said, Why not tell us about the thieves before this one?" Kevin then said, "Because this time it was the proto-nuclear engine that would use nuclear blast to push the thing up at high speed and steer it at high speed. The rest were pretty harmless parts." Ben screamed, "Say what?" Kevin then said, "Look, the thing has been going in and coming out of the water at the parts. Now he has a portal nuclear reactor, but it won't work till the thing gets the propulsion unite. $5 says this guy just wants to go home and doesn't know radiation is harmful to humans." Gwen blinked, "Good guess." Kevin smiled as he said, "Thanks, and we're already flying to the place with the propulsion unite. Now he be needing it so we can confront the BSTRD when he shows up to get it." The ship then landed, and as people came out holding weapons, Kevin walked out holding a plumber's badge. "Relax guys, same side, same side." A Colonel Razum then walked up as he said, "You're lucky, all governments must bow down to you plumbers." Ben then walked up and said, "And you need us to stop the alien form making a lift off and what would be underwater irradiating the waterways." The Colonel then pointed and said, "Just go guard the last piece, damn it, alien." He screamed the last part with venom. Gwen then said, "Xenophobic," as she walked past him. Kevin then said, "If you were a government agent I would kick your butt." Ben then said, "You took the words right out of my mouth, Kevin." Later on they were guarding the propulsion unite as alarms sound as the shellfish bipedal alien burst down the doors with water jets. Ben's eyes raised. Wait, Chiyo had a dream that involved a red walking shellfish with water jet powers. Ben then tried to transform, but the Utah matrix won't work. come on, not no, you piece of junk. Kevin then touched a wall, turning into metal as he charged in, saying, look buddy, we can't let you have it. Radiation is deadly to humans. If you want to go home, we'll call a ride. The alien said nothing and fired water jets at him, knocking him away. Gwen then fired off mana blast at him. I don't think he wants to talk. The alien made a bubble shield around him, protecting him before it popped it and hit Gwen with a water blast, knocking her out. At the moment the omnitrix dial popped, a yellow light scanned the alien, making him say, what did you just do? Ben looked confused as the omnitrix said, new DNA sample acquired. Ben then hurried and slammed down the dial, turning into a copy of the alien with green eyes and the omnitrix symbol on his chest. He then screamed, water hazard. The alien backed away. What the hell? He was threw off, so Ben held out his hands and fired off water jets, knocking him down before he asked, look buddy, you got a name? In a moment Ben turned the dial and became Chromastone. The alien got up, it's by Valvan, I just want to get home. Chromastone then fired an energy blast, knocking him down again. Well, we nicely offered you a ride home already. And you turned it down by attacking us. We can't let you kill or harm humans to get home. So you will go home, but under the charges of grand thief, attack plumbers, and endangering lives. Bivalven tried to fire off more water blast, but Ben turned the dial and became Arctiguana and breathed out ice, freezing the blast in him as he said, now you just chill. The plumbers you send you home for your jail sentence, and next time offers you a peaceful way out, take it. Ben then timed out normal and Bivalven, after what they have done to me and my friends I will never trust an Osmosion. Kevin then raised an eyebrow as Bivalven went into some kind of hibernation from the cold and passed out. Gwen blinked. Kevin, does your kind have some kind of bad rep? Kevin shrugged, I don't know, I've never met another Osmosion in my life. Ben looked at the omnitrix. Chiyo had a dream with this guy, she talked about it for weeks, even down to me gaining his form. He stared at the water hazard hologram and said, I know it takes 3 things to be a pattern, but still. I'm a bit uneasy now. Before long the plumbers were loading up the sleeping Bivalven, but once on board a masked plumber killed the crew by shooting them in the back of the head. He then removed his mask and smiled as the face of a Gregor. A Gregor smiled as he said, 1 back, 4 to go. The next morning Ben was standing before his school looking scared as Jessica held his hand and Chiyo said, you can do it, big brother. Ben then walked in to see his schoolmates and teachers clapping and cheering, and Ben smiled, they like me, they really like me. Chiyo then said, yeah, only a fool would believe that stuff that Duty Head on TV says about you, and I still think Jimmy got off too easy even if he is grounded. Meanwhile, Charmcaster, Vulcanus were meeting in a circus tent as Zomboso walked in with a shovel covered in dirt. Zomboso then said emotionlessly, sorry I'm late, good help is hard to dig up, especially if you have to keep burying them. Vulcanus then said, okay, we get it, you're creepy as SHT. And a killer clown. Now can you make this quick? This place is creeping the hell out of me. Zomboso then said, this is a circus, a place for family fun, so watch the long. Vulcanus, but why I've called you is simple. We all now know the name and face of a curtain heroic shapeshifter who's been a thorn in all our sides since he was 10 years old. Vulcanus crossed his arms, really? Do you have peanuts for brains? You think the 3 of us could take down BEN10? Zomboso then said, there is more than one way to make someone pay Vulcanus. Charmcaster then grabbed the flame off a candle and make an image of a family. Ben may be able to protect himself, but his family is another story. Zomboso nodded, that's correct, Charmcaster. My plan is for the 3 of us to team up and kidnap a member of Ben's family and have our revenge on Ben through their BLD, what fun. He then honked his red nose. Vulcanus then said, I want to say no, but I know better than to anger a psychic clown. I mean, I bet your clown shits acid, for crying out loud, you creepy red-nosed BSTRD. Zomboso then said, long Vulcanus, and yes, my clown does shot acid, strong enough to melt through just about anything, no matter how otherworldly strong. Want to see? Vulcanus covered his mouth and nodded no. Charmcaster then blow out the flames with a smirk. Then let's start planning. It was late that night and Chiyo was in bed when she woke up with a yell after hearing a loud blast that made her look out her bedroom window to see a big blast hole in the backyard and Grandpa Max cuffing 6-6. Chiyo blinked in confusion before closing the curtains while blinking in confusion, what the? She then ran to her big brother's room to see him gone and she asked, what's going on? Max then opened the front door making Chiyo run downstairs. Max smiled, good you're okay. Chiyo blinked in confusion, what's going on? Max then looked down, what happens when a secret identity is lost kiddo? Chiyo was shaking, I'm scared. Next day. On a country road Carl Tennyson was shaking his 4 late tires. When on a high hill in hiding was Zomboso, Vulcanus and Charmcaster. Zomboso was cleaning an acid shooter as he said, now Charmcaster spell making those large thorns grow as made him stop. Lady and gentlemen, I have you Carl Tennyson, normal American working father of BEN10 stuck no knowing he is in danger and rip for the killing. Vulcanus smirked, now we kill him. In a moment a pink mana blast hit his right shoulder making that arm fall off and he jumped, what the hell? The 3 bad guys then turned to see Ben as Swampfire Kevin having absorbed stone, and Gwen all looking angry. Ben then made fireballs, did you really think we wouldn't be watching our families like hawks? He then threw fireballs at Zomboso as he said, I've had enough clowning around. Zomboso pulled out a toy plane and rode it into the air away from the fireball, witty very witty. Ben's eyes widen, what the hell is this a cartoon? Kevin then made his hands into hammers and charged at Vulcanus giving him a right stone hammer fist to the face knocking him back. Eat this. Vulcanus stumbled back holding his face with his one arm as he spat out a tooth, never been hit that hard. Kevin growled, well now I'm madder than normal as I spent all last night battling your little pickaxe freaks to keep my mom and little brother safe. Vulcanus then tried to hit Kevin and said, I didn't know you had a little brother. Kevin morphed his hammer hands into big hands and grabbed Vulcanus' fist and ripped it off, leave my family alone. Vulcanus stepped back, okay now this isn't good for me. At that moment Gwen was throwing mana blast at Charmcaster and said, stop targeting our families it's us you want fight us you cowards. Charmcaster made a spell barrier and summoned her rock monsters which charged at Gwen only for Gwen to rapidly fire off mana disc breaking them to pieces. Gwen's eyes were glowing as she said, leave my uncle alone. Zomboso was laughing in the air as he fired acid from his thrower down at Swampfire, do you remember me Ben? I remember you. Ben turned the dial and became Wildvine and jumped out of the way as he stuck his front roots into the ground making a tree grab Zomboso as Ben said, yes I remember you a big fat overgrown schoolyard bully always picking on those who couldn't stand up for themselves. Ben then grabbed his seeds form his back as he narrowed his eye, and always messing with my family, members of what he did to Max and Gwen still playing in his mind. Wildvine then stretched his arms to throw the seeds at him. The seeds exploding when they hit him only for Zomboso to explode into confetti. Zomboso then appeared behind Ben and hit him with a cartoonishly large red hammer knocking him away, I wasn't ready for a shapeshifter no I am. He then spotted Carl driving away, and we've missed our chance they are here and he is gone. Zomboso then tapped his nose making him Vulcanus and Charmcaster vanish in clouds of smoke and confetti. Ben returned to human form and got up holding his head, what the hell? Gwen then blinked, this is like when we were 10. Kevin then blinked in confusion, I'm lost. Ben then adjusted his jacket, long creepy psycho clown story. Meanwhile in his circus Zomboso watched the pickaxe aliens replace Vulcanus' arms and hand as he said, now what clown? Zomboso then pulled out a pic-framed picture out of his ear, it was of Ben and Jessica, sadly he is watching his family too closely to strike at them, but they are other targets to wound a man. Meanwhile at Mr. Smoothie Jessica was with her mother Lucy and Jessie as they walked out the 3 bad guys walked out. Lucy screamed and hid behind Jessie. Jessica then pulled something out of her pocket and hit a button making it beep and turn into a blaster and with a quick shot he hit Vulcanus in the neck joint making his head and the little tiny not fully regenerated body attached to it fall out of the suit and land on his head. Vulcanus then crossed his tiny arms and said, okay I'm done. I'm out. Carry on without me. Zomboso then pulled out his big hammer out of nowhere as Charmcaster summoned her rock monsters. Zomboso then said, "No ladies, you are outpowered, I would like you all to come with me quietly." Lucy was shivering, oh hell no. I've seen enough horror movies to know better than to listen to a clown. Jessie then said, "Jessica, get behind us." Jessica point the space gun at Zomboso head, "You are the one who should be leaving. This isn't just a laser gun, it's a distress beacon. By changing it I just send a distress call to the plumber's base. Now guess who are on their way. Here's 2 hints: 1, he kicked your butts when he was 10 and I call him boyfriend. 2, robotic that looked like gloves on wire then came out of Zomboso's hat and clapped as he said, "Well played girl." He then spotted a plumber ship coming in as he said, "Plumbers and BEN10 at your call, so I guess I'll have to go with plan C now." In a moment his robotic arms covered Charmcaster in a sheet. Zomboso then dropped his hammer and pulled down the sheet to reveal Charmcaster and Lucy had switched places. Lucy screamed. Charmcaster was tied up behind Jessie, gagged so she could say any spells, and her hands covered so she couldn't move them to control mana. Zomboso then threw a screaming Lucy over his shoulder as he said, "Wrong lady, but I haven't really mastered the trick, but any hostage is a good hostage." Lucy was screaming. In a moment XLR-8 showed up and charged at Zomboso as fast as he could. Only for Zomboso to explode in confetti before he could reach him. XLR-8 growled as he turned to see a sight that would haunted him: Jessica covering her mouth crying. XLR-8 teared up, unable to protect someone. XLR-8 returned to Ben in tears, unable to think of something to say. Meanwhile Lucy was tied up hanging by a rope from a tightrope as she screamed, "What are you going to do to me?" Zomboso then set on up the safety next and turned on the power, electrifying it. "Simple, Ben will have his cousin Gwen use a tracking spell to find you. Once he and team come to save you, I will hit my nose triggering the cutter on the tightrope and you'll fall into my electric safety net and be shocked to dead before his eyes. Then I win and Ben loses." Lucy was panicking. "You were going to do this to my baby girl?" Zomboso said, "Yes, but doesn't matter, with luck your death will be enough to end his relationship and Ben will live his life alone, a failure as a hero without the only woman in the universe that cares about him no matter what he turns into. Hero fails and is broken-hearted for life, I double win." Lucy then said, "You're insane." Zomboso then said, "Why thank you Mrs. Jackson." Unknown to him and invisible, I had been watching, and in a moment the breaker box was smashed by an ice mace, making the net die and the lights go out. Soon a red bioluminescent light filled the room to reveal Ultimate Big Chill. In a moment ice fire froze Zomboso in place and Ben said, "Enough." Ultimate Big Chill covered his hand in ice fire, targeting my parents. Targeting my girlfriend and her family. I've had enough. You will leave everyone I care about alone. And tell everyone you know, clown. In a moment Ben turned on a lantern and set it down as he became normal Big Chill and turned his chest dial, within seconds became something ogre-like with a metal helmet chained to his body. The Omnitrix symbol was on his chest and he had 1 black shorts with a green belt. He then opened the cage on his helmet making mist and the sounds of witches' laughs, and demonic screamed escape. Zomboso screamed in fear at what he saw. Ben's back was to Lucy so only Zomboso could see the face and Ben said, "Don't tell me you're scared of old Topic. Well, let's go Ultimate, shall we?" He then slammed the dial and went Ultimate, making Zomboso scream in horror so loud it could be heard all over the world. What felt like moments later Zomboso was being loaded in to a plumber craft. He was rolled into a ball shaking, looking completely like an empty shell. Lucy stretched as she said, "Okay, now I have to like you even if you are my daughter's boyfriend." Jessica then ran up and Lucy opened her arms for a hug, but she hugged Ben instead, making her gasp. Jessica kisses Ben happily with tears in her eyes. "I know you could do it." Lucy was crying, "But what about me? I was the one who got kidnapped." Jessie then ran up and hugged her. "It's okay, I'm here dear, I'm here." Later on, Ben, Gwen and Kevin were facing a turtle-like alien who had just went on a rampage to get attention and help. As the Omnitrix scanned him, the alien said, "My name is Galapagos, I came from what you call Andromeda. Me and my friends are on the run for McGregor. He's Before he could finish, Ben said, "Big scary guy with a spear, red skin, horns, in a trench coat." Andromeda then said, "And an Osmosian, but how did you know that?" Ben then said, "My little sister had a dream with me fighting him and meet you and that last guy, along with aliens that looked like suit of armor, an armadillo, and a jellyfish." Galapagos rubbed his head and said, "I've seen those aliens and know what armor is, and that sounds about right for my friends." Kevin then blinked, "Well, now this is getting spooky." Galapagos then said, "Sometimes dreams show you visions of the future. If his little sister got this right, I would listen to her. She was clearly given a big one." Gwen then called the plumbers to take Galapagos home while he told them everything he knew about Egregor. Once Galapagos stepped on a ship and it took off, he heard a scream and saw Egregor walk out saying, "No one escapes me." Inside a warehouse, 3 people were trying to break open someone's suit of armor: a surgeon, a man with a buzz saw, and a man with a hammer. All tried and failed. Then they heard laughing. Then in walked Kevin, followed by Henry, who was dressed just like his big brother. "So you're the dude who wants something cracked open, and will buy heavy for it?" The man in the suit of armor then said, "Yes, but no one can open it up. I'm starving to death in this torture machine." Henry then pulled out a crystal and handed it to Kevin. Kevin held it and said, "Nothing is stronger than titanite." In a moment Kevin absorbed it and the man in armor backed up a bit. He then said, "I didn't know there was an Osmosian on this planet." Kevin blinked as he handed Henry the crystal. "So you're an alien." From what that turtle said, I bet you're Panda. In a moment Kevin morphed his arms into swords. Panda then said, "So you're met, my friend. How about we cut the small talk and you cut me out of this thing before I starve to death?" Kevin then said, "Okay, man. Hold still." He then stabbed at his blades, going through the armor like a knife through hot butter, making the other 3 men gasp. From Kevin's pocket a beep came from his badge: high radiation level detached. Kevin then backed away. "You produce radiation." Panda then said, "Yes, but you are a plumber. Clearly your job is to help people in trouble. I'm starving to death, unable to eat in this thing. My life is in danger. Please do your job and help me." Henry blinked and looked to Kevin and said, "He got you there, big brother." Kevin then morphed his hands back to normal and held them up. "Look, dude. I will do my job, but you need to stay cool. I'm going to call a pickup. They will get you to a safe place so we can get you out of there and get you home." Panda then screamed, "No. 1 million to whoever can force him to open this tin can." The 3 people all charged at Kevin. How forced Henry behind him and he made a shield to block the buzzsaw. The saw's chain shattered upon contact with his crystal shield. "You didn't get the "nothing is stronger than titanite" line, did you?" The surgeon then tried to hit Kevin in the stomach, only for his titanite stomach to break his surgical saw. The hammer guy just picked up Henry and took the crystal and said, making him scream, "Forget the freak show. I got what he used to crack the thing." Kevin roared and made his fist hammers. "Get your hands off my little brother." In a moment Panda stood up and from his grill fired off a radiation blast that knocked Kevin through a wall. "Forget the brat." Hammer then put Henry down. As the hammer went to hand the crystal to Panda, Henry ran to Kevin. Panda took it and jammed it into the wall Kevin had made, making the hole bigger and moving it around to make it larger. "It'll take time without the Osmosian, but it will do." Hammer then held out his hand. "And my money." Panda laughed as he fired off radiation blast, knocking out all 3 human thugs. "I'm an alien. I don't have earthly monkey. It was all a lie to get this thing open." Henry was outside, and spotted Kevin in a creator as he got up and rubbed his head. "Henry, don't you tell Mom about this." Kevin then spotted something flowing through a wall. It was a glowing red energy humanoid who was smiling, finally free. It was clearly Panda, who flowed to a power line and touched it, absorbing the power in it as he said, "Finally food." Kevin got up and said, "He eats energy. And if he's starving, then he'll most likely go to," point to the nuclear power plant in the distance and said, "Henry, cover your ears, big brother has to curse." Henry then covered his ears as Kevin got up and started speaking and running back inside while he pulled out his badge to call for backup. Slightly later, Panda was flying to the power plant when a pink mana blast hit him and he rubbed his stomach and said, "That was so sweet, thank you whoever gave it to me." Gwen then said, "Stop." Panda then turned to see her in an energy dome. "Oh, you are the one who gave me the sweet little cake, Miss Anodite. I know how this works. You give something tasty, then you ask for something." Gwen then said, "Look, I get it, you're starving, but if you eat the nuclear plant it'll blow and kill a lot of people." Panda then held his chin. "Well, now I don't want to hurt no one. But I also don't see anything else being able to fill me up enough. So what? So I want more my own life, or the lives of people I don't know. I got to go with me, Miss Anodite, sorry." At that point Ben as Terra spin blow in and land, Buddy listened to reason. In a moment a yellow light came from the Utimatrix symbol on the chest, a glow Panda didn't seem to notice. Panda's eyes widened. "Galapagos?" Ben nodded, using the new transformation to try and follow him. "Yeah, buddy. Listen, you know my kind's way of putting others before oneself and my personal belief in doing whatever it takes to make sure it happens. Just land and stay still. Let the ship come and pick you up. So you can just go home, and no one gets hurt." Panda rubbed his chin. "Galapagos, my friend, you are the reason we escaped. I am grateful, but I'm pretty mad with hunger at this point. So please don't hold this against me." He then fired a radiation blast at Terra Spin. Ben then span and flew out of the way fast as he said, "Kevin now." In a moment Kevin ran out holding the damaged armor, having absorbed its metal. He threw it at Panda, knocking him down. Panda then struggled to lift it off him as he said, "This accursed thing. Get it off of me." Kevin then jumped on top of it and said, "Ben now." In a moment Terra Spin transformed into Cannonbolt, who then went ultimate and yelled, "Ultimate Cannonbolt." Panda's eyes widened. "Imposter." In a moment Ultimate Cannonbolt rolled at them, opened and grabbed them both inside. Ultimate Cannonbolt shake and rocked and bounce around, form what was going on inside of it. Henry then walked up to Gwen and pulled on her socks. "Miss Gwen, what's going on?" Gwen shrugged, "No idea." Ultimate Cannonbolt then opened up to reveal Kevin and Panda, now once more in the armor, now altered so the arms were fused to the torso, unable to move. Kevin then panted and said, "One good plan is what happened, Gwen, one good plan." Panda then said, "Having someone impersonate my friend to trick me. All you Osmosians are alike." A little later on, when Panda was on a ship heading to space, he noticed someone walk up to his cell. It was a Gregor, his spear covered in BLD. Panda then said, "I should have known. You would be working with one of your own kind, you monster." A Gregor then laughed, "Fool, I'm not working with the hatchling. He is but an unknown pawn in my game. Like all of you." Panda then said, "Do your worst, you monster. With my last breath I shall spit at thee." Next day, Ben was with Chiyo at an airport. People were looking at him and Ben said, "Take a picture, it'll last longer." A lot of camera flashes then went off. Ben covered his eyes. "Why are we here anyway?" Chiyo smiled. "Miss Osaka and Miss Sakaki are going here as estranged students." Chiyo then held up a sign on a stick that read, "Osaka and Sakaki." In moments Osaka and Sakaki spotted the sign and ran up to her. Chiyo ran to them and hugged them. "Miss Osaka, Miss Sakaki." They both hugged her and said, "Chiyo-chan." Osaka then waved to Ben. "Hi, Ben." Ben waved back, "Hi." More camera flashes then went off as Ben turned the dial to Lodestar and slammed it down. "That's it, Lodestar." He then transformed into Lodestar and lifted his claw, making all the cameras float into the air. No more pictures. Osaka blinked and put on a happy dumb face. "Ben, how you talking without moving your lips?" Sakaki blinked and moved, placing her hand between Lodestar's torso and his floating head. "Really? That's what you ask? Now how his head is working when it's not attached to his body." Ben then said, "Osaka is Osaka, Sakaki." He then walked. "Now come on, Chiyo, we got to get a move on, the paparazzi are coming. And I only have 8 more minutes of Lodestar to hold them back." Osaka then smiled blankly and said, "Okay." Sakaki flipped her hair and pulled out her phone and sent a text. "Max Tennyson, just arrived getting off the plane, ready to report for duty." Sakaki then put it up and smiled and blushed a bit when looking at Ben. She looked away and muttered to herself, "For 3 months I'm in America. Home of BEN10. Chiyo smiled happily as she got in the back seat of Ben's car. Sakaki joined her, and Osaka got in the front seat as Ben became human again and drove off. Osaka then blinked and asked, "Ben, what's it like being famous?" Ben then said, "A nightmare worse than that time a group of my enemies teamed up." Osaka blinked, "Okay, what's it like being unable to turn into other things?" Ben then said, "The ultimate freedom, I can literally be whatever I want." Osaka then blinked and said, "Okay. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 3. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author JBoy44 on fanfiction.net. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.